Hey everybody, Scott Dion Brown here, and today I'm going to be talking about the BLACKBERRY Keyone, specifically the phone's camera. So my perspective on this camera has a lot more to do with video than it does with photos. I would say that 90% of my use of the phone's camera is for video, specifically vlogging. So I'll start this video with the things that I like. And to be honest, that's most things. I'm quite happy with the camera on this phone overall. And then I'll finish it off by talking about something that I'm really not very happy with and hope that they can fix in the future. So let's get started. So how do I feel about the video camera on the BLACKBERRY Keyone? I like it. I like it a lot. If you watch any of the vlogs on my channel, especially the more recently posted ones, those were all shot almost exclusively on the BLACKBERRY Keyone. It's not perfect though. There are a few things that I would like to change, but the things that I would like to change are not really problems specifically with this phone as much as they're problems with shooting with a smartphone in general. So my absolute favorite feature on this camera is the ability to adjust the brightness with this little fader right on screen. So you can see now here I'm looking at Mega Man. I can turn it up this way to make it darker, and I can pull it down this way to make it brighter. This feature alone is the easiest way to make sure your videos look awesome. I really notice it. I mean, you've probably seen people like to go to a concert, say, and then film the band. Generally, I say if you're gonna take some footage at a concert, shoot for a few seconds and then watch the concert. You're never gonna watch those videos again. But if you insist on doing it. So many times, especially when you're watching and somebody's posted it on Facebook or something, it's always completely washed out. And the reason for that is because the camera is looking at something with a huge variation of light. You've got spotlights down on your singers, and then it's usually darkness everywhere else. And the camera doesn't know what it should be adjusting to and what you want to see clearly. And so with this thing, you're able to dial the brightness down so that you can see those performers' faces perfectly. It looks way better, and it's allowed me to shoot many things, including live music footage, and it looks really good. Also, for when shooting in dark situations, right on the screen there's a little light bulb icon. Tap it, and now you've got a spotlight. The camera also gives you the option to input the grid lines, which for photographers and filmmakers you'll appreciate having. If you don't know how to use those, you can Google what they're for. But generally, things that you want to place a lot of emphasis on, photographers and filmmakers will place those important elements at the intersection of those 4 points. So it's nice to have that option. The next feature that works really great is the autofocus. It's pretty standard the way it is on most smartphones. You just tap your finger on whatever you want to focus on, and when it turns green, it's focused. It works great, it's snappy, and it allows you to get some great footage. The camera also has the option of advanced image stabilization. So if you're filming in an especially shaky situation, you can turn that setting on and it'll make every effort to smooth it out a little bit. I think it works pretty well. I generally just leave it on all the time just because smoother is better. However, there may be a reason to leave it off, especially when I start talking about variable frame rate, which I'll get to a little bit later. But it's a nice feature to have. So now let's talk picture quality. Obviously there are two cameras on this phone. There's the rear camera and the front camera, and there's a huge difference between them. So the rear facing camera takes fantastic video. Outdoors, indoors, in the dark, in the brightness, and because you can adjust your brightness settings right on the fly, it's really easy to make the video look great no matter what setting you're shooting in. Now the front-facing camera is good. I would only say it's adequate. It still shoots in HD. It's good for when you're walking and talking to the camera. It looks good, but you'll notice that the picture quality is a lot better on the rear-facing camera. So in terms of picture quality, the rear-facing camera is fantastic. I use it all the time. Front-facing camera is adequate. So the camera has the option of shooting in a variety of frame rates. You can shoot in 4K at 30 frames, 4K at 24 frames, or 1080p at 60 frames, 1080p at 30 frames, or 1080p at 24 frames, and then you can even go down to 720p and shoot at 60, 30, and 24, all in 720p. I've only shot in 4K once. I haven't felt the need to switch to 4K yet, but it's nice to know that the option is there. Obviously, your video files get a lot bigger, but I find 90% of the time I shoot in 1080p, 24 frames a second. 24 frames gives you that film look, while 30 frames gives you more that TV look. I prefer the look of 24 frames because I like how film looks. One good thing to think about though, about 4K. Even if you're planning to render down to 1080p, if you shoot in 4K, you can then zoom in digitally, and when you render down, you're still at full HD because you shot at a higher resolution. If you're shooting a concert footage or maybe a sporting event and the subject is far away, shoot it in 4K, then you can zoom in, render it at 1080p, and you're gonna get a much closer, tight shot, and you're still gonna have high resolution because you shot it in 4K. So that's something to think about. But for the most part, I shoot 1080p 24 frames because it's more than I need. The next feature that I'm really happy with is the microphone. The microphone quality on this camera is very, very good. And also the direction works really well. There have been times when I'm walking like this talking to the camera, and I wonder whether the sound around me is gonna be so loud that it won't hear my voice, but I find more often than not, you can hear my voice very clearly, so I can't complain at all about the microphone. Another thing I've noticed microphone-wise, let's say I'm doing a vlog covering a live event. So I'll have my phone with me and I'm vlogging, backstage stuff and my preparation and things. But oftentimes when it comes down to the actual performance footage, I have to rely on some of my friends or family members who are there, who filmed a few minutes of it for me so that I can put that into the vlog. I actually got a really good example of that on my previous vlog, and I'll link to it in the corner. There's a shot of me performing at the Toronto Diversity Festival. So now there was a KeyOne user in the audience who shot some footage for me, but there were also two other people who shot on iPhones. They all sent me their footage that I could then put into the vlog. So when I got all the footage and started reviewing it, I noticed at first that the KeyOne footage sounded muffly and almost like it was distorting, and I wasn't sure why. And then I compared it to the iPhone footage, and the iPhone footage sounded a little bit clearer at first. But then when I listened to it with an actual decent set of headphones, I realized that the KeyOne had picked up all of that low-end bass that the other devices didn't. And that distortion sound I was hearing was actually the speakers that it was coming through, just not being able to handle that much bass response coming through. So what I'll say is, it's a good quality microphone. I've been very happy with it. The next feature I really love about this phone is having external storage, specifically in the form of a micro SD card. Having a micro SD card makes it really, really easy to quickly dump the footage onto my computer and start editing it right away. Yes, I know there are cloud-based options where you can upload everything online and then download it. And there's also the option of, I guess, plugging directly from USB straight into the computer and ripping it that way. But I find nothing is more efficient or as quick as just ejecting your card, plugging it into the computer, and dumping it onto your hard drive that way. The other thing I like about that is there's no downtime with the phone. If I have my phone plugged in via USB and I have to sit here with the phone plugged in while I wait, whereas with the SD card, I can eject it, plug it into the computer, and I can continue to use my device. I can even continue to shoot while the footage dumps onto the computer. All I need is a micro SD adapter, which I use, and it allows me to work with the footage the exact same way I would with the footage I get off the DSLR. External storage, fantastic feature. So now that we've talked about the things that I'm happy with, let's move on to the things that I'm not so crazy about. So the first thing, it's not so much something I dislike, but I think it's just something I should let you guys know about. In past videos, you've heard me talk about the awesome battery life on this phone, and it really is awesome battery life. It's still the case at the end of the day arrives and I've got 30, sometimes 40% battery life, sometimes higher, sometimes a little less, but it never runs out before the day is over. However, I must say, with vlogging and video, all of that is different. Using this phone for vlogging or shooting video all day long, it is a drain on the battery. I was in Costa Rica a little while ago and I was vlogging the whole time. There were so many awesome things to see. I kind of had the phone out all the time. Everywhere we went, I was filming everywhere. Which actually, from a vlogging perspective, isn't actually the best thing to be doing, because then you'll find yourself with hundreds of hours of footage and you've got to go through all of that to get down to the, 10, 20 minutes of a vlog that it should be. So maybe that's a bad idea anyway. But let's say you want to make those editing decisions later and you do want to put yourself through that, which I guess I want to. It's still the case that shooting video all day long will kill your battery. There were times when I got to like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon and it was down to 10, 15%, but that's because I've been shooting constantly since 9 a.m. So it's something to keep in mind. If you're going to use this device as your main vlogging phone, get yourself a power pack. You will need it. Okay, so now let's get to the thing that I really dislike about this device. Although, to be fair to BlackBerry, it's not really them. This seems to be a problem of smartphones in general, and I'm not sure if there are any smartphones that don't have this problem. The thing that I greatly dislike about shooting video on the BlackBerry KeyOne is variable frame rate. So if you don't know what frame rate is, I'll quickly run it down. Video is obviously made of a whole bunch of tiny little photos taken one after the other, and then those photos are shown to you in sequence very quickly to give you the illusion of movement. And that's measured in FPS, or frames per second. So when you shoot in 24 frames per second, every second of video, you're actually seeing 24 photos. 30 frames per second, you're seeing 30 photos per second. So on the BlackBerry KeyOne, you have the option of shooting in 30 frames, 24 frames, or 60 frames. However, that's not completely accurate, because the way these phones shoot video, they adjust the frame rate based on the lighting conditions of the video. And if you have a smartphone, you'll probably notice the same problem. Turn on the front-facing camera and then start walking around in a really dark room. You'll suddenly notice that the image quality gets really, really choppy. That's because the camera is slowing down the frame rate to try to make the picture clearer. I think that's what it is. To be honest, I'm not an expert and I don't 100% know why it's a thing, but what I do know is that usually when it gets darker, your frame rate slows down. You really notice it on the front-facing camera. Now, the only time I use the front-facing camera is when I want to address the camera directly, obviously. But there have been times where if I'm in a really dark setting, I'll start shooting the footage with the front camera and I'll notice that it's really, really choppy. So then what I'll find myself doing is flipping to the rear-facing camera, flipping the phone around and pointing it at me and talking this way. Obviously, the problem with that is I can't see myself in the screen, but at least the footage is smoother. So again, I would prefer variable frame rate wasn't a thing. I'd rather have a nice smooth video than this choppy thing that happens every time it gets dark. Editing software does not account for variable frame rate footage. That's because professional cameras don't shoot in variable frame rates. So like a DSLR, for example, if you want to shoot at 24 frames per second, which is what I like to shoot at, in fact, it's actually 23.976 frames per second, you set it to that, your video will be a consistent 23.976 frames per second. When you shoot a bunch of footage on your smartphone, import it into your editing software, the first thing you're going to notice if you check the frame rate of each clip is that they're rarely the same. I find if I shoot on 24 frames on this camera, most of the footage is 24.011 frames, 23.99 frames, and it goes up and down. So right off the bat, all of your different clips are slightly off from each other. It means that once you finish editing all your clips and you render out the final video, some clips will play back perfectly smooth like normal, and others, the ones that are slightly off frame rate, will sometimes look a little bit choppy. Is it a big deal? Well, yes and no. It's a big deal in the sense that I would never use this phone or any smartphone to shoot a movie, but I don't do that anyway. When I'm making films, I'm shooting on a better camera. At the very least, I'm shooting on a DSLR, or if I'm making an actual film, I'm shooting on digital film cameras. And in my experience on YouTube, the impact a vlog has on somebody has a lot more to do with the personality of the person and the quality of the editing. The odd 5-second clip of a slightly lower frame rate, your average viewer probably won't even notice or care. So I just went on a huge rant against variable frame rates. I don't know what the solution to fixing that is. I don't know if it's a hardware solution or if it's something that can be fixed in a software patch. But BlackBerry, if you're ever watching this and it's in your power to fix it, fix it. I would love to be able to set my phone to 24 frames and it will shoot at a consistent 24 frames. So variable frame rate, fix it. But all of that being said, what is my opinion on the camera of the BlackBerry Keyone? I really like it. I like it a lot. As I've said already, I've been vlogging with this thing for months now. If you look back through my channel, especially for the last few months, any vlogs on there were all shot with this device. I've gone on vacation with it. The battery is fantastic. You get many hours of footage, although, like I said, if you're vlogging all day, bring a battery pack. Shooting video puts a lot of strain on the battery, so keep that in mind. But it's still a really great battery. Picture quality is great. So, with the exception of having a variable frame rate and with a only okay front-facing camera, I really like the video camera capabilities of the BlackBerry Keyone. Do I recommend this phone for vlogging? Absolutely I do. Now, I'm sure there are phones out there with better cameras. And if you're looking for a phone that is exclusively for media use and vlogging and you want to be a full-time vlogger, this is probably not the phone. But again, nobody bought a BlackBerry exclusively for vlogging. I mean, I bought this phone for productivity, I bought this phone for the keyboard, I bought this phone for battery life, I bought this phone for efficiency, and I love it for all of those things. I still love my BlackBerry Keyone. The only phone I might replace it with in the future would be a Key 2, but at this point I have been able to justify buying a Key 2 because the KeyOne is still going strong. But I think I'll wrap things up here. So to sum up, camera on the BlackBerry KeyOne, I'll give it a thumbs up. On a scale that I just invented right now. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'm Scott Dion Brown. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you'd like to see more, hit that subscribe button. I post videos at least once a week, and ring that bell so you get all the notifications. I'll see you guys next time. BlackBerry KeyOne, Black Edition.